call this work session to order. It is Tuesday, December 3rd of 2024. It is 3:01 p.m. Ms. Cordova, please call the roll.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Ms. Garza?
Here.
Mayor Houston? Thank you, Ms. Garza. Mayor Houston?
I'm here.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Here.
Mr. Gleason?
Here.
Mr. Mendoza?
Here.
We have a quorum present, Mayor.
Okay, and next is our citizen comment time period. City Council will hear citizen comments at work sessions, workshops, and regular meetings. There is a sign-up process. Speakers may speak once, may not yield time to others. If you speak, you'll have 3 minutes to speak when you state your name. A timer is displayed on the screen. You'll start in the green. When the timer shows only yellow, you have less than 20 seconds left. When the timer is red, your time to speak is up and a bell will ring. Our first speaker is Virginia Parker.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. I'm Virginia Parker with the San Marcos River Foundation. I cannot come to make public comments at 6 tonight, and so I just wanted to go ahead and tell y'all the River Foundation is very much in favor of the zoning changes. There are 3 at the Carson property along Lower Purgatory Creek, and the reason we're so in favor of this is because it moves away from industrial zoning, which also removes 4 acres of impervious cover out of that area, which is great considering it's a flood-prone area. So I just wanted to voice my support for that action item tonight. And then I also wanted to correct a couple of things that I said about, I was talking about a grant at the last workshop with regards to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife grant that could be utilized to remove Cape Stam. I've been calling it the U.S. Fish grant. It's not. It's actually a NOAA grant. But U.S. Fish is who put it forward last time. So I just wanted to clarify that one point. And then secondly, to mention, the River Foundation does stand firm that we would like to see it removed as quickly as possible. And in talking about the NOAA grant to some different folks, it would not be funded until 2027. So you're looking at 2+ years before funding for removal. And so the idea was thrown out that the money that is going to be spent on the project manager to assess feasibility, that money could be spent to remove Cape Stam. It's more than enough. And y'all would have Smurf's full cooperation and removal. So I know that the RFP is going out this week for the project management position. And so if y'all did want to change direction with the county's approval and dissolve the MOU to assess feasibility on Cape Stam, that would need to be done quickly. And then that RFP money or the project manager money could go towards removing the dam. So I just wanted to clarify those couple points. Sorry for misspeaking, but y'all are gracious and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks for bringing those corrections to us. We appreciate it. Ms. Cordova, I only show one person had signed up for citizen comment. Is that correct?
And
All righty. Then we will move on to presentations, item 1.
receive a presentation on the Texas State University 2025-2035 campus plan.
Ms. Reyes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This afternoon's presentation on the Texas State Master Plan will be a joint effort from the following individuals. Eric Algo, he is the Executive Vice President for Operations and the Chief Financial Officer for Texas State University. Dan Costello, who is the Associate Vice President for Facilities. Gordon Bohmfalk, University Architect and Director of Facilities Planning, Design, and Construction. Ryan Losk, Principal Planner, Principal in Charge, Page. The central themes for the Texas State Campus Master Plan for 2017-2027, which addresses the San Marcos campus, the Round Rock campus, and Science, Technology, and Advanced Research Park include increasing academic capacity, increasing research capacity, enhancing the student experience, strengthening pedestrian corridors, augmenting campus support and infrastructure, and building a sense of place. The city continues to collaborate and coordinate with Texas State as a community partner. We meet monthly in order to ensure that we are communicating on essential community matters. I will now turn it over to Dan Costello to give us the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate the opportunity to share our campus master plan with you today. Next slide. Okay, I'll be going through just hitting the highlights for the planning process, some of the strategic drivers, and out some our recommendations. And then Gordon will talk a little bit of the detail when we talk about very specific areas on the San Marcos campus for development. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as was discussed, our planning scope included all of Texas State University properties. Today we're going to focus primarily on the San Marcos campus. But you can see our planning includes the Round Rock campus, the San Marcos campus, as well as our outlying properties. Next slide, please. Our plan leadership included representation from the campus community. We also had representation for staff members, students, as well as City of San Marcos. You can see that we had the mayor, Stephanie, and then Will Conley also served in our steering committee. They participated in 6 different meetings as we went through the process. Next slide, please. And you kind of can see the schedule. We started off with discovery, which was just collecting information, ideation, which is when we were considering big ideas, and then we're in the synthesis space or phase now where we're looking at all the different information and coming up with recommendations. In addition to the steering committee, we had participation from City of San Marcos staff in a Spring Lake visioning process. So we had Habitat Conservation as well as Parks and Rec participating with us on that. And then early in the process, we met with Stephanie's directors and a lot of their managers just to kind of talk about transportation and development. So also early in the process. So I felt like we had really good participation from City of San Marcos. Next slide, please. We have an open house where we're going to share kind of the general concepts with the campus community. We've also had this particular event on the 5th of December added to the city community calendar. So it's going to be open to San Marcos community as well as the university community. We're also going to schedule kind of a more public outreach for January. I think we're going to try to do it at the Community Events Center. Again, an opportunity to engage with our community. Next slide, please. And one more. So the purpose of a campus master plan is to take the university plan, which looks at our academic and research planning, out to 10 years. It looks at our big ideas, focusing on student success that run to R1, which is discovery and research as well as academic excellence. We also added some themes with community connectivity. We looked at transportation. We looked at kind of the boundary areas with our communities, and then we always want to make sure we were paying attention to the environment and being good stewards of our resources. So the results of this is to give us these kind of planning steps to help tie all these different principles together to make sure our development is in alignment with those priorities. Next slide. This shows our projected enrollment growth. I think what you can see here is we're projecting growth for our current almost 40,000 students to 50,000 Most of that growth is in the Round Rock campus, where we show going from almost 1,000 students to 10,000 students. Some of that is the result of moving to some four-year programs at the Round Rock campus in lieu of just the two-year programs we're offering now. But a good bit of that is our global campus, which is online programming. You can see the increase for the San Marcos campus is relatively moderate, going for about 38,000 now, with moving to 40,000 students. Next slide, please. This shows our housing requirements. Right now, we have almost 10,000, a little over 10,000 beds on campus. A portion of that number is Castro Hall, which some of you might remember is James Street. Those beds will be delivered this coming fall, so that's about another 940 so beds, but 10,000 total. Next slide. This shows our on-campus housing requirements for the San Marcos campus. You can see that we're projecting about a 1,500 bed shortfall in 2027. We've already got a project programmed for that. We've got a request for qualifications out now for architectural firms. We'll be shortly advertising for the construction manager for that project, with the intent of delivering both dining and housing in 2027, fall 2027. Next slide. And one more, please. This shows the Star Park campus. This looks very similar to what you might have seen in the last campus master plan. So no real changes there. Next slide. And this is our long-term vision. So what I'd like to call attention to is, as you look at the colors of these buildings, the dark red are buildings that are either under construction or are planned. And then the light orange, those are buildings that reflect major renovation. So what you see on this is that we're constraining our growth to our current property. We have a small number of new buildings planned for construction, but we'll shortly be pivoting to a different type of strategy. Instead of building new buildings, we'll be doing major recapitalization of existing buildings, which is taking our aged buildings and it's basically a slab-to-slab comprehensive renovation, which gives us the opportunity to change use and bring our building systems up to more modern standards to address our deferred maintenance. Next slide, please. And then parking and transportation, which you can see here, this shows our primary routes. We have about 48 buses operating right now. We offer rides for about 90,000. We have ridership of about 90,000 a week. So we get the system's pretty heavily used. It continues to be kind of a pressure point for us. We're going to engage a consultant this spring to do a more detailed look at our parking and transportation requirements to maybe look at different strategies. So what you see here is the main routes now. The light blue buildings reflect the possibility of parking garages. Also, what you can see on this kind of to the bottom right of this slide is Thorpe Lane. That's currently a dirt lot that's used for temporary parking during football games. We're doing the geotech and surveying now to turn that into a paved lot to offer additional commuter parking. And we expect to have that lot open fall of 2025. Okay, next slide. I'm going to turn the podium over to Gordon, our university architect. He'll do more detailed discussion of the different zones.
Good afternoon. Gordon Baumfalk, University Architect, Texas State University. Let me catch up here to where Dan left off. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going from east to west. So starting at the football field and some of the areas around there. Like Dan said, you can see the areas in red are some of the buildings that we're proposing: indoor practice field, That's actually a garage up there on the corner, and some expansion to the baseball field down there on the lower left. And lots of great things about Spring Lake that are just up above this, but I'm going to come back to that. So let's go to the next slide. So this is around JCK and middle of campus. So you can see the proposed buildings there around the auditorium. That's the music building and another fine arts building there to the left. An expansion to performing arts. Going up to the right, that's a parking garage on the other side of Sessom. And lots of improvements in between Old Main and JCK, mainly for connectivity and just gathering of students and faculty and things like that. So next slide. Then middle of campus, Dan mentioned our 1,500 bed project and dining that's there on the right. Right now we're calling that Hilltop 2, but that, yeah, like I said, 1,500 beds and also dining. And then moving to the left, we have a parking garage. We have our STEM facility that's under construction now. Just to the south of STEM, there near Academy is a proposed chemistry building, and then some improvements up to the MIDI buildings. Next slide, please. And then West Campus, some improvements to student circulation and the student rec center and things like that. Next slide, please. A little more focus on the STEM area. So STEM building under construction, working on foundation as we speak. Just below that, again, is chemistry, and just to the right of that is proposed parking garage. We're also looking at a new bridge crossing Comanche. So you can see the yellow connection that would connect to the plaza area on the west side of Alcac and into the STEM neighborhood, which would be Supple, Ingram, and STEM. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. Excuse me. Really excited about Spring Lake. So we really, in this 10-year master plan, really focused on what are we doing with Spring Lake? And it's so super exciting. Great vision for Spring Lake. We are working with the Indigenous Cultures Center up in the top part of the slide. Let's go to the next slide. Maybe we can blow that up. Yeah, here we go. So up at the top, that's where Indigenous Cultures would be. We're proposing a new entry back around to the right side of the site and open up a lot of trails and things like that. Really looking at plant material and removing asphalt and other things and making it a little bit more educational facility. Next slide. And this is looking at the Meadow Center and looking to the north. Excuse me. So a lot of improvements here for trails and things like that. And in our master plan, you'll see that we're trying to remove a lot of the hardscape and get back to nature and get back to native plants and things, activities and things like that. Next slide. Next. Yep. Okay. So this is at Sessom and Sewell Park. So one of the things we're proposing is replacing the bridge that goes over the creek and doing improvements to some of the head walls that have been damaged. around the river and connecting up as we go to the south into the city trails and connecting over across the street into JCK and Old Main. Next slide, please. And this is looking back to that proposed new bridge going over the creek. That would be a new entry for Texas State. And coming back with some appropriate landscape and plantings and trees and things like that. Next slide. And here you can see this is a proposed bridge going over the creek. So you can see that you would be able to actually walk underneath it from Sessom over to the other side. Next. Okay, I think that's it. Any questions?
Council questions? Let me check with our folks who are not here. I think a lot of folks are going to be happy to see that the, most of the increase from the 40 to 50 is scheduled for Round Rock.
Yep.
I think that's going to be very, very helpful. Also, there'll be some online and another campus way south.
Yep.
Way south.
Way south.
I just like to thank you guys for being here
You bet.
and including our staff, Ms. Reyes, the mayor, and being involved in this process, because they've been helping us keep informed of what's been going on. This is super informative to the community too, so I have a place to send the community when they ask what the university's got planned for the future, that they can go back and watch this presentation and see the maps and see what's gonna be coming. I like the additional mobility. I hate to see the parking lot by Bobcat Stadium go, but obviously you need an indoor practice facility. And the new bridge connecting to Bobcat from the other side, that was in here, but it wasn't talked about, I think is gonna be extremely helpful for mobility, walking back and forth. And, yeah, it's exciting. You know, I'm happy for you guys, and thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
On the 40,000 though, the projected growth, I saw by 2033. In these discussions, just because I'm not familiar with them, was there any discussion about establishing a cap on that 40,000? Like, let's say projected growths do in fact increase higher than that for our San Marcos campus. Was there any
I think we felt like
conversation
that
about
was gonna be our top end, you know, based on the facilities that we have and the buildings that we would be remodeling, that's our top end in terms of students.
So it's safe to say anything outside of that would be outside of what y'all can accommodate?
Yeah, Eric, yeah. Yep, you'll take that.
Eric Algo, hi, I'm the Executive Vice President of the university. We think physically that's where we start to sort of run out of space here in San Marcos. But just to be clear, ultimately, we take our leadership from our Board of Regents, which are appointed by the governor. So it's really not for any of us to ever say we could place a cap or to make promises that ultimately we can't really, you know, promise you. We think that that is a very aggressive growth pattern for us to handle over the next 10 years.
So I guess with that, I saw that, you know, after this, after the public open houses, y'all will plan to present this to your Board of Regents?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
at their February meeting.
Okay. And has a cap ever been a topic of conversation in these meetings? I don't know how frequently they meet.
No, I'd say it's just the opposite. The governor and all of the direction we get from statewide for all of the universities is to grow significantly. When you look at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's goal to educate at least 30% of Texans, 60% of Texans with some sort of post-secondary degree, it would require every institution of higher education in the state to double in size, including community colleges. So the conversations are rarely about capping or being smaller. They are always about how can you serve more students. Our primary focus in that is by growing online, growing in Round Rock, growing in partnership with community colleges. We are beginning to award four-year degrees at Collin College up in the Dallas area and working with partnerships with a half a dozen other community colleges so students can stay close to home. As the mayor alluded to, we've opened a campus in Querétaro, Mexico. So we have, which doesn't really help, educate Texans. So our focus is less about growing San Marcos because, again, I think we start to run out of space physically. And as Dan, I think, said, and I'll just reiterate, we have no plans to continue to try to grow or buy land in San Marcos. So we will sort of run out of space at some point here. So it's those other avenues, I think, where most of our growth will come.
Thank you. I just wanted that on record. Thank you.
You might address was it called Closing the Gaps back in 2000 and what that requirement was? I'm remembering, was it another 500,000 Texans to be educated? And that was like 10 UTs, and that was those of us who were working there then kind of went, you went, what?
Yeah, so both Closing the Gaps and the more recent plan, the 60 by 30 plan,
Right.
require just significant additions to higher education in Texas for us to get up to the level of being competitive with many other states. So, and that's likely not going to come from the creation of new public universities. It's got to be the existing ones serving more Texans.
Well, the goal is to have more people educated at a higher level. And so I get where they were coming from. I thought it was pretty aggressive, but I think university, we met the goals that we with the marks we were supposed to, correct?
We did in the Closing the Gaps plan, we did, yes, Mayor, that's correct.
Mayor, I do have one more question.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
So, you've seen trends around the state of Texas, which surprises me, but I'm happy to see them. Universities like the University of Texas, who just recently announced, they're going to offer free educational opportunities for anybody under 100,000. Is there any discussion on that for our San Marcos campus, for any of our residents? I am a newer member, and so when I was doing, campaigning, one of the things that came up from community members was there is not a harmonious relationship right now on a lot of the people who have been here for a long time. And so I imagine those same people, though, would benefit from opportunities like that. And so is there any discussion around that?
Yeah, so Texas State University has long had a policy of providing free college education to anybody with a family income of less than $50,000. We've gone to the legislature in this coming session. It's already out there public, and we've asked for funding to help us take that number to 100,000, which is what the University of Texas just did. There is some consternation and pushback that UT was able to do that. They didn't ask anybody to do it, they just did it. For better or worse, we did ask. So we are now waiting on the outcome of that, which will happen over the course of the next legislative session. We'll find out whether we're going to be able to make a change to that. So we hope to be able to. I would add, though, that Texas State University also offers what are called assured scholarships, meaning you can go out to our website without ever applying for a scholarship or even to admission to the university, and based upon your grades and test scores and things like that, you can see exactly the amount of merit scholarship you would get if you come to Texas State. That's a sort of rarity in higher education to have that level of transparency. When you combine the Bobcat Promise program, which is that 50,000 and less program, with our assured scholarships, which is purely merit-based, we frequently find that students who are making less than $100,000 today end up paying very little to come to Texas State in any event. Another interesting thing I'll just put out there, we're still doing the data on our side, but there was a story in the Austin American-Statesman today that mentioned some of the things about UT making this increase. And if you look at the numbers in that story, it was interesting to me that they had historically been at $65,000 if you could get into UT, where that was free tuition. They're going to 100. they anticipate that they can serve 5% more students by doing that. So 5% of their student body fell between $65,000 and $100,000 in terms of their adjusted family income. I think at Texas State, we're going to be similar in the 5 to 10% or so of the student body that would be covered by that. But we still think it's very important, especially locally. If we can go from 50 to 100, it could have a huge impact.
Oh, for sure.
And if I may, Mayor, just as a caution, this is really about the master plan is the topic, and I think we're kind of straying a little bit off topic here. Appreciate your answer, though, and it's about planning, master plan. You can, of course, connect the dots if you need to, but it is almost like a
Well,
land use.
The master plan includes enrollment, and they were giving enrollment numbers, and so we were talking about how those enrollment numbers might change, so that's why I was kind of going with it for a few minutes.
Well, I can get that, if it relates to how it's going to impact the growth.
That was my last one. Thank you.
I have one more thing that I'm sure was discussed, but we didn't really discuss it today, was the changes in the bus services. And the city just put it out today on the social media that we're gonna start discussing and asking questions about the integration, and I'm extremely hopeful that that was put into this plan and discussed about your bus stops and the parking and the additional, and what that might mean. Can you discuss that at all, of how that was discussed, or what that
Yeah.
might mean?
I would love to, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the work that we've done around transit over the past decade between the university and the city. I really think that what we've been able to achieve already sets a great benchmark for other college communities that have a large university. And around the country, I think we're building a model here that others should emulate. What you may or may not know, just a bit of history, is prior to about 4 years ago, the university was not a public transit provider. So we didn't register with the federal government. We weren't counting our ridership towards federal government dollars or those sorts of things. So the university voluntarily began to submit all of our data, do all of the audits and all those kinds of things. We are not the recipient of those dollars, though. The city of San Marcos is the recipient of those dollars. And so our reporting of our ridership data has yielded about $13 million in federal funding that's come into the city over the last several years. That's going to help what we think in the future is going to be a much more seamlessly integrated transit system between San Marcos and the university to really become much more robust. So we're looking forward to doing things like removing any differentiation between university buses and city buses. How do we have an app where, for example, any member of the community can see all of the buses and realize they're all free for everyone in the community to use? You don't have to be a Texas State student to get onto our buses, but today I think it's a little intimidating because the word's just not out there. So we have, I know the city is engaged in their strategic transit plan right now. We're helping participate in that. We just sent out some surveys to our student body recently. As Dan mentioned, we're going to add on to the master plan in the spring a real focus on transit and parking as an add-on to this study. Okay. So I am really excited about what we've already been able to do in partnership with the city, but I think we have even some really more exciting things that the community will notice more in the coming year or two as we begin to make it feel more like one transit system.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I'm most excited about, and I really wanted you to touch on it because you obviously particularly involved and know all the details, and informing the community of what this is going to mean for our public transit, both for the students and for our citizens, is a huge deal. And you recording that data was tremendously helpful. I mean, it was critically important for all this to play out. So this is where, when we talk about the partnerships between the community and the university, this is the stuff that really makes a long-term difference and creates a model for, like you said, for other cities who have these universities and are struggling with their public transit of utilization and maximization. And this is the kind of thing I'm super excited about. So I can't wait to see how this plays out, and thank you for working with the city on this because it's going to benefit all of our citizens.
Thank you for including Ms. Reyes and me in the meetings that you've had. They've been quite enlightening, even for somebody who went to school there and worked there for 33 years. There are different ways of looking at things now and how students work and how they go to school. And so that was good, and I appreciate that. I appreciate coming to give us the plan and presenting it at the city. So thank you very much for doing that. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks to all of you for your time. In particular, I want to thank the mayor and the city manager. I want all of you to know, they were there with their city hats on, not their Bobcat hats on. They really, their involvement was really helpful for us, and I think it's led to a much better plan this time. So thank you all. If you have additional feedback, in addition to the open house tomorrow, the contact information is there in the presentation. Feel free to send us any other thoughts or comments you have. We have not finalized the plan yet, so there is still an opportunity for your voice to be heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it very much. Ms. Cordova, we will move on to item 2.
Receive a staff update and hold discussion regarding periodic reviews of the San Marcos City Charter, the Charter Review Commission appointment process, and provide direction to staff.
Mr. Gary.
Good afternoon, council, mayor and council. This is an opportunity that comes along every 4 years. We're going to talk today about the process for amending the city charter, and it's really a preview of what's going to come ahead. Today, there'll be no action. Of course, there's direction from council is allowed if there is something council wants to direct, but really today is just to give you a preview, and we'll be coming back with more information in January. So I want to talk a little bit about our charter. In Texas, we have something known as home rule municipalities, and under the Texas Constitution, a home rule municipality may have a charter, and a charter is essentially like our version of the Constitution, and that is what dictates and controls the manner in which we can adopt ordinances and take other actions as a city. Similar to with the state constitution and the legislative body. If you can go to the next slide, please. Under the Constitution, something that's notable, state law provides that cities may amend their charters no oftener than every 2 years. And I think back to my old boss because that was his favorite word, and he used to invoke it as often as he could. He used to invoke oftener, so it's a little shout out to Mr. Cosentino. He's been through this process a few times, and this will be my first time, of course. So the state allows us to amend our charter at least every 2 years, and locally, and beginning in January 2013, and at least every 4 years thereafter, the city council should appoint a charter review commission of 7 citizens of the city to review the charter. So even though state law allows every 2 years, we've chosen in San Marcos to do this every 4 years. And there's a few things to unpack in that very first statement there. One is that starting in 2013, every 4 years, at least every 4 years thereafter, it's designed to basically set up the review process to occur in non-presidential election years. And whoever came with that, there was some collective wisdom there that felt it was best to have the charter be the focus of attention for voters, so voters could look at local issues only, rather than be distracted with state and federal elections and so forth. So it's in a non-presidential election year when this would occur. The next thing you'll see in there is the council would appoint a commission of 7 citizens of the city of San Marcos. Well, what does that really mean? We have to appoint residents of the city, not residents of the ETJ or outlying areas. And Any questions so far on that? All right. So the term of
Oh,
office.
Sam?
Yes, ma'am.
I do
Oh,
have
yes,
one
sir.
question, regarding the charter. To change the requirements on the certain boards or commissions or city council, is that gonna be done in the next couple of weeks or so? Or how do we make sure that gets on for a discussion item?
Okay, I'll talk about that a little bit further along in the presentation. I'll mention
Thank you,
that.
sir.
So the term of office for the commission shall be 6 months. Next slide, please. Duties of the commission. There's several things going on here. Again, the charter is the Constitution, and everything else that the city does really flows from that. So some of the things that the commission will be looking at, and this is all set out in the city charter, is they will inquire into the operation of the city government under the charter provisions and determine whether any such provisions require revision. They may conduct public hearings and may compel the attendance of any officer or employee of the city and may require the submission of any of the city records which it may deem necessary to the conduct of such hearings. Next slide, please. The commission may propose any recommendations to ensure compliance with the provisions of the charter by city departments. They may propose any amendments to improve the effective application of the charter to current conditions. And the commission may report its findings and present any proposed amendments to the city council. Next slide, please. So there's a few steps in this process. The next thing that's going to happen is we'll come back to you in January after the holidays, and you will have the opportunity to appoint a member to the commission. The mayor and each council member may appoint one member to the commission.
And
And-
this is the first meeting in January, correct?
Yes, Mayor, that'd be the first meeting in January.
Thank you.
And again, why is that? We have 7 members of the commission, we have 7 council members, and that way everybody has a seat at the table. The next thing that happens at this meeting is that you, as the council, will give your charge to the commission as to what topics you as a council want the commission to study. It's possible that the commission has other ideas as well, not just the council. So the council will have its own charge, but in addition to that, the commission may end up taking suggestions from within the community, from its membership, and so forth. So they will have a very big task at hand because they'll be looking at a lot of areas for possible amendments or revisions. Now, it's notable, it's not as simple as each council member just say, I want this to be examined. The council as a body, just like when you give council direction, it's going to take at least 4 of you. So you may have some great ideas, but it'll require the concurrence of at least 3 other council members to go forward to the commission. So thinking ahead with the next month or so that you have until the next meeting, think about some of the types of things in the charter that you feel need to be studied or addressed, and you can bring that back to that council meeting and we can have that discussion, and if it garners the support of at least 4 council members, your items would then go forward to the commission for a recommendation. Any questions regarding that? Going back to Mr. Gonzalez, that's when, going to your question, that's when that would happen. So if you have a specific concern or an issue you would like to address in terms of qualifications of board and commission members, qualifications of council members, things of that nature, you can bring forth your idea for the council to consider in January. Did that answer your question, sir? All right. Next slide, please.
I guess you didn't hear me, but it did. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you were on mute.
So the term of the commission is 6 months, and there's a reason for that. It's a very involved process. I've attached a copy of the current charter to the packet, and get some coffee or some caffeine and read through that, because you'll see some really interesting things. One of them, and my favorite one, is that we've got this long charter that goes into all kinds of things, but at the very end, the very last paragraph of that charter is about fluoride in the water. You know, so that's just an example, and that's the kind of thing that can happen in a charter, some very, atypical types of things you would think. It's not just about city operations, it's not just about qualifications for office, elections, things of that nature. It can be any variety of things that are within the purview of a home rule municipality, to the extent that the state has not, one, preempted us or specifically prohibited a certain type of measure or activity, right? But to the extent we have that latitude that's granted to us by the state, we can control our destiny at the local level, and that's what the charter does. So in San Marcos, we have fluoride as the last paragraph, but any number of issues
Well, that
can
was
be
a result
addressed.
of a petition and an election.
That is correct. And one of the points I had here was that once you get this going and the council finally recommends its proposed amendments, we don't know if there could be a parallel track from within the community, such as a citizen initiative or whatnot. Because you can also amend the charter through citizen initiative, so that we don't know what will be on the ballot in 2025, but potentially that could also be in line with the council-directed amendments. So what happens is the commission is going to come back with a report. And as you know, in San Marcos, we typically call the election for November. We call the election in August. So these measures to amend the charter, it's going to take several weeks or months for the commission to go through all these things. I believe the commission back in 2017 or so had like 12 meetings. The most recent one, I think, had 7 meetings. And it could be more or less, but it's a lot of work. And so what would typically occur is the commission tries to get the bulk of its work done by the end of April or so. So that work can come back to the city council for further consideration. And what happens sometimes, the council may say, hey, we're great with what you've done. That could potentially be the end of it. But often what happens is council weighs in, and maybe additional work is going to happen at the commission. But the bottom line is they have to have a lot of meetings in a sort of a compressed time frame. It can be weekly, perhaps. And so that's a consideration as far as the people you consider for appointment, because it is a time-consuming effort. But what we would hope would happen is more or less around April, preliminary findings and recommendations would be made by the commission, presentation to the council, further direction, if any, from the council, and then a final report coming down sometime before we have to call the election in August. Any questions on that?
You say typically we call for the election in August, but isn't that actually required?
That's how the calendar always works. Yeah, it's
Because
August.
isn't it August 17th
You
or
count-
something? I don't
you
know, I
count
haven't looked for
backwards.
next year, from
Right,
the
we
election
count-
day.
Yeah, we count backwards, but it ends up being August.
Yeah, but
Yes.
it's August and we don't have the luxury of waiting till September.
No, ma'am. So it has to be final and ready to place on the ballot by August in
with
terms of the final
wording and
content.
everything. Okay.
Next slide, please. Let's see. Are there any general questions about any of this process?
Can I give an example? And I don't want to
Yes,
debate
Mayor.
this today, but this is something that I'm going to suggest we consider. And that is our charter used to say we meet 24 times a year. Before the last time, when we decided we would like to take some time off in summer, we dropped that number to 22, so we could take off that one meeting in July and one in June. I'm going to suggest that we drop it to 20, so that we can skip the first meeting in November, because whatever we do with the election, it's always kind of a mess. And then perhaps even the first meeting in January, because when that falls on the second or third, that's putting a lot on staff over the Christmas holidays. So I'm just going to suggest that one. We'll figure it, we'll decide if we want to pass that one on to the Charter Commission, and then they will consider it, and it'll be in their report. So that's just an example, but it needs to be something that's in the charter, or would reasonably go in the charter.
Yeah, and that's a great example. And of course, like Mr. Gonzalez raised an issue about should the charter have provisions that talk about the qualifications for different boards and commissions. And the difference is the council is free to adopt a number of ordinances that talk about things like qualifications for board and commission members. That could actually be done by ordinance. But the difference is when it's the charter, right, that's the voters approving that. And so it has a certain you can count on that unless the voters overturn that. That is what governs the operations of city versus an ordinance. One council can adopt an ordinance in 2 readings, and a subsequent council with 2 readings can repeal that ordinance or amend the ordinance, right? So it's just a function of, whether you want it really to be something embedded and predictable and reliable and the voters approve versus something that could be changed on 2 readings, right? So
Yeah,
The
right
other
now, the only one that's in here is Planning and Zoning Commission that I'm finding.
that's
All the
correct,
rest
Mayor.
of them are created and altered by ordinance.
That's correct. And a good example too is for you to look at is the measures that were proposed by the commission in 2021, I believe. I've also attached that to the packet, and that'll give you an idea of the types of things that they addressed. And it's not all glamorous stuff like fluoride, right? Sometimes it's typos. It can be grammatical corrections. It can be inconsistencies. So yeah, it can be mundane as well. So it's not all high level or high impact stuff. Sometimes just corrections to grammar and spelling and things of that nature.
Yeah, like, whenever, it used to be fashionable that the position that Liz holds was called city secretary. And then, I don't know, across the state of Texas, they all started calling it city clerk. So we went to city clerk, and I think there was one place that it got missed. And so the next time around, I had to catch up on that.
Right, and one of the things that was, in fact, also, I think, speaking of city clerk, I think the residency requirement was altered in the
We looked at
charter. So again,
Residency of all 4, I think, no, 3.
And one other thing is,
The judge was on there too.
what we try and do from legal as will serve as sort of the staff liaison with the commission to help them conduct their work. And one of the things we look at is, we want to let there be a free flow of ideas, and I try to do the same thing here with the council when we meet every other week, and that is, we don't want to step in and start saying you can or can't do a certain thing. What our goal is, let the ideas come forth, and when we get to the commission level, we can then drill down, are any of the proposed measures prohibited under state law? We would opine on that. Is it preempted by state law, or is there some reason we can't do it, for example? So we would, weigh in on that when we have our Charter Review Commission meetings. We would, of course, let them know if there are any parameters, so.
Yes, I have a question. So I guess on the preemption, that wasn't even a question, but let's flow with it. So let's say something's proposed it's arbitrary whether or not it may be subject to preemption. Do we request a ruling from the Attorney General before we just say, no, this can't be in it? Or do we sort of put up a challenge
Well, I would,
if there is something arbitrary or something obscure in it?
well, we would first have to give our legal opinion on whether, if we already have our, a conclusion about that, we wouldn't seek a ruling. We would simply advise you that something is prohibited, for example.
Just
So
because I
that's
know
typically
it's
how we
so
would do it.
all-encompassing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I know we're limited on the precedents that we've actually seen come out of that preemption bill. What about you kind of touched on it, the actual commission itself, does it follow like a chair? Does it have that same standard formation?
Yes, what will happen is that the first meeting, like other boards and commissions, they will elect a chairperson and a vice chair. They will adopt, well, they can do any number of things that they feel is best for them, but what's typical is the appointment of officers and also setting out a schedule, so they have some predictability on when they're gonna meet. And that's not only helpful for them, but it's helpful for the public, right? So they'll talk about meeting schedules, times, and how they want to conduct their meetings. They'll adopt their own set of rules.
Okay.
And I think the mayor's served on, how many? One? So,
It's been a while.
And are these recorded or like,
they are public meetings. They'll have citizen comment period and all that.
okay.
But we do need them recorded, so whatever it takes to make that happen.
Yeah, just to avoid any concern from the public that these weren't, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
these
it
are,
wasn't a thing 4 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was, because they were doing Zoom, because it was 2021.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I mean, it's up to the commission clearly, but like hybrid options, like for people who
oh,
just can't.
I think, I'm just assuming that will be the case, because that's where we've gone with all of our boards, or at least most of our boards and commissions, is have that hybrid, in-person or virtual.
With the
option.
chair and the vice chair on site.
That's correct,
Not
and that's only because of state law, this in particular. Not only that, it's probably a good idea in general, but state
Yes.
law mandates that the presiding officer be in person. So think about those appointments and think about your possible requests for the commission to study as far as amendments.
One of those that kind of discussing, kind of hitting on what we're discussing here that I think needs to be brought up, and I won't get to be part of those discussions, that's why I'm gonna throw this out there now, is that we require the mayor pro tem and deputy pro tem to be on site. And maybe we allow a certain amount of misses per year or something during their terms, but because we've gone to more and more hybrid, and with the possibility of having a presiding officer missing or have something happen, I feel like they need to be here as much as possible. Now, we can give leeway for a certain amount of, times, but I think that's one of the things that should be discussed, that if I don't get to be part of that discussion, that I hope this council and that the commission will look at. That's one thing. I was looking through here and having discussed some stuff with some community members, that was something that was brought up, that I hope will be discussed. But I didn't have anything else, and it's gonna be pretty interesting. It's, the charter's long, and it's a big legalese document, and.
But then again, it's really not that long.
No,
all
it's
things
about
considered.
80 pages.
No, it's 47.
Was it 40-some pages?
47.
Oh, I know, I was including the notes.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
47.
But it's interesting, and, having, been part of the selection process last time, and really having gone through it, it's interesting,
Yes.
and,
Speaking of selection, so council will each be appointing someone. I assume that we want to publicize it, have the clerk open up this particular charter, which isn't normally open, when people apply for boards and commissions, to open that up, have communications send this out, hopefully ASAP, tomorrow wouldn't be too soon. And then what deadline do we want to set for that, so that we've got that list? Because we will be appointing on January 7th. If you're not ready, and you have to wait a week, 2 weeks, that means 2 weeks out of their 4 months is gone. So we have to be ready on January 7th. So when do you need those lists? When do we need to close it off? Because then, Ms. Cordova, how much time do you need once it's closed off to prepare a list of people and the applications for us?
We don't need a lot of time once it's closed. We just need to have like a hard deadline, because it's hard for us when, you know, we close it and then there's still people coming through.
Right. So, okay, well, right now, we're talking about advertising and when the deadline's gonna be.
Exactly what my question is.
Then you go ahead.
What you're saying is basically, we pick somebody and then they have to fill out the application for it?
Well, the applications are a way of finding out who's interested in serving, but it also gives the staff the correct spelling of their name and the phone contact and an email address. But if you've read the applications, people have an opportunity on that application to tell us who they are, how long they've been here, et cetera, and what they could possibly bring to this particular commission.
Oh, my
So it's
question-
good if they fill it out.
My question is, we choose whoever we want. We don't vote on that.
We will vote as a group, but we each will appoint our own person, but we're gonna vote on it just to make it official, correct?
Yeah.
Right, but I guess just to make it clear, the practice has always been, each council member does get an appointee, is that, and the mayor, right? That's how it's done.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying that, and making sure.
Yeah.
I guess last time, did people apply? I thought we just gave names. I mean, I don't care either way, but
That's why I'm asking, do we want to do that? If we don't, and we feel that we can each come up with someone on our own, then we need to decide that now, because our next meeting in 2 weeks, December 17th, is too late to open something up and then make it due by the end of December.
Right, and-
So that's why we're having this conversation
That's
now.
correct.
And I'm asking your opinion, what do y'all want to do?
Considering the importance of this commission, I think it's only fair to open up to the citizens of San Marcos to apply.
I kind of assumed that we would want to do
That seems fair to me, so that we have everybody here to have, if we've got our options, but they deserve a chance to apply.
The one thing I'll throw out here as far as all this goes too, because the runoff is so late, as late as it possibly can be, the new council member is not gonna be sworn in until the 23rd of December. Just keep that in mind when you guys set your date here, that gives the new person time to figure out who they might wanna appoint, and that their people that they may wanna appoint get an application filled
That's
in.
why we want, well, I would assume that both people running will take this into consideration. And that's why I'm thinking the deadline, I don't know if you want to make it before Christmas, if you want to make it December 31st. I don't know. That's why I'm trying to get this determined at this point in time, but we're going to be appointing long after that election.
And
Yeah, but you do have the Christmas and New Year's and getting sworn in and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not gonna throw my 2 cents in any more than just keeping that in mind, keeping aware of that somebody is gonna be new on the 23rd.
Yep, but we're not appointing until the 7th, so I think we'll be okay.
and
So, Mr. Mendoza, you're saying, yes, we need to have an application process?
Yes, I'm for that.
Okay. Mr. Gary?
I was just gonna, in response to Mr. Gleason, is that, one of the first things I will do, and the mayor and I actually talked about this, was that, whoever our new council members, that we get them up to speed as quick as possible on this process, so that they'll be ready to go on the 7th.
Well, I'm hoping that they're both interested in being elected to the council, that they're watching this meeting, or they will watch it later, and therefore they will know. So I would just kind of assume that. Maybe that's not the case. Application process, Mr. Gleason?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, I support. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, though, like, it has to be somebody on that list. I think it is important, to Mr. Mendoza's point, because it's so significant. It only happens every 4 years. I think it's the least we can do to open it.
Open it up, see who's interested, but you're
Yeah.
not limited. But if you do choose someone else, then you do need to get that information to the clerk, so that they will provide to Mr. Gary, so they can be contacted about a meeting. So you're a yes?
Yeah, I
Mr.
don't have
Scott?
an issue with that.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So, Ms. Reyes, can that be sent out by communications relatively soon, like this week.
And-
Deadline?
You're gonna do a deadline, do the 31st or something. Got to give staff some time, because you won't be back here on the 1st, and
Ms.
Second.
Cordova, would y'all be able to get that to us? If the deadline, and a hard deadline of the 31st?
staff think that's okay? I mean,
It's
that's,
a Tuesday, and because the list doesn't go in the packet, we would like to have it by Friday. So if the deadline is on a Tuesday, can you get that to us on Friday so we can look at it over the weekend?
Yes.
Is that possible?
that's kind of what I was thinking. date-wise,
December
too.
31st?
Yes.
December 31st? Okay, December 31st. And then to us, whatever that Friday is, January 1, 2, 3, 3rd or something, whatever it is.
And Mayor, just so there's no doubt, and maybe just for me, so there's no doubt or uncertainty, Mr. Scott raised the question, for example, if a council member already knows who they want to appoint, even though y'all are going to appreciate the other applicants, but if you know who you want to appoint, is it the understanding of council that you would direct that person to still fill out the application, or is there latitude to make appointments from outside of the application?
I have no idea who I'm looking at, but if I had someone in mind and I felt very strongly, I would ask them to fill out an application, just so they're in the system, we get the name, we correct spelling of their name, email address and all that.
And
It's not
And I only ask
necessary,
'cause
but it
I-
would be helpful.
I want to make sure that the other council members, so everybody understands that's how it would work then, if that's how y'all
I
are.
think it's super helpful, but I'm gonna throw a little different angle here, that I think the way the charter reads, I don't think it's required.
No,
The
none of this
charter
is,
doesn't address the application process.
This is your
our
process.
But it says-
decision
but it
of what
says-
we want to
I know,
do.
but it says council appointee, like, that's
It
not.
says council appoints 7.
Yeah,
Yep.
Each council member gets to appoint one, there's nothing in there that, so I'm just, that's kind of, I was looking at it, already kind of looking. at it.
Well,
right, and I'll say that
When
here,
this was written, all this stuff, we didn't have an application process.
Yeah,
right, that, it's just a process you all are in charge of however you want to set it up. And the other thing, again, to make it clear, each of you get one of your appointees, right? So, but it's just going through a process.
And as we talked about once before, you might want to have 2 or 3, because it's entirely possible. I've got somebody in mind and somebody else does too, and they appoint that person. I need to have a backup so we can have all 7 appointed that night.
And that's the main reason I see an application filled out, is for that very point right there, is that there are times where I'm like, oh, I got somebody picked out, and then they get appointed. And so I always kind of have 2 or 3,
You
like.
want to have, you need a backup.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Anything else on this topic?
Right, so just so we're clear,
Yes, ma'am.
we are gonna open up the application process, but like day of, if, you know, the 3 people that we decide on or whatever that applied, other people choose, we can't, like, we don't need to have an application for them on file for us to appoint somebody else, right?
That's what we said. It's
Okay.
helpful, but not required. But if but if they don't do the application and you want to appoint them, you're responsible for getting phone number, email address, and all of that to the city clerk.
Okay, cool.
Anything else? Then I think we can close this one out. And we will go to question and answer session with press and public, which, no one in the lobby, no one signed up online.
No.
In that particular case, and no executive session today. This is rare. Enjoy it.
I'm not complaining.
No executive session. So I will adjourn us at 4:10, and we will see you back here at 5:55 or so.